Next question is, a senior stakeholder proposes a change mid-sprint. How do you manage it? All right, so I've seen this situation frequently in both government and commercial environments because priorities, they're always changing and evolving rapidly. Um, when I was supporting the USDA online application modernization effort, my role involved managing a team, delivering capabilities that digitized the farm loan process for producers nationwide. And during one sprint, a senior executive requested a significant enhancement after the sprint had already begun because of a policy change that affected the loan processing. The impact was substantial because introducing new work mid-sprint threatened the team's commitment and jeopardized several features that were already in progress during the sprint. So I first investigated the urgency of the request and found that the root cause was not a delivery problem, but instead there was a change in the business priorities. So what I did was I decided to facilitate a discussion between the product owners, stakeholders, and delivery team. And I advised that we remove the lower priority work and then bring in the newer requirements into the sprint without increasing the team's capacity.
Okay. So it seems like you were able to get to a point where you're saying that we dropped some work and we took the story in. That's what you are saying, which makes sense. But the way you reached to that did not make sense. You first started by saying there was a policy change or something, which means that you really don't have a choice. You have to do it if there's a policy change, right? It's not a negotiation because it's governance. Second, when you went to the root cause finding mode, root cause you gave uh, felt like you were not giving the cause, you were just giving who was at fault, who was the blame one. It wasn't us, it was them. That is the way you painted the root cause. The right answer is this that you gave, that we negotiate the change. But your opening needs to be very clear about one thing. Sometimes you just have to do the work regardless of uh, is it important, critical, or not. I mean, if a VP comes to me and tells me we need this done urgently, I'm not going to negotiate with him. If I can deliver that work with the help of my team, I will take that favor, do that work, help him be in. But a pattern is more concerning. So you're understanding where I'm getting at, right? Because this is the reality of organizations. No matter um, how methodical and how procedure driven you are, you will have people pushing down your throat. And sometimes when a senior stakeholder comes to you and says, you know what, I need this done, you will do it. You are not going to say, hey, this is not linked to our sprint goal or this or that. You will get the job done. So give that in your answer because people expect to hear that, yeah, sometimes you have to do the dirty work, you will do it. You won't be fussing about it. And then talk about if there is a pattern, then how do you try to work around that? That part, this answer fits, right? Now, again, all of these questions are missing the 7-step approach. You have the same issue as you had in the first one. So I'm skipping that feedback. And we're just keeping it to content. All right, let's look at the last one.
Okay, so the first question is, your team's velocity has dropped significantly over the last 2 sprints, but there is no obvious cause. How would you investigate and take action? So I've encountered this situation several times in these enterprise agile environments because the drop in velocity is normally a symptom of deeper issue rather than the actual problem. So when I was working for ECS Federal, I was supporting the Department of Homeland Security Modernization Program. I was leading multiple teams, and over 2 consecutive sprints, our team's velocity declined by 30%. There was no obvious cause. There had not been any staffing changes. There were no major production incidents, and the team was still completing work. But the impact was significant because our leadership relied on our velocity trends for releasing forecasting and PI commitments. And if that issue continued,
Not your leadership, you. How can you predict work? Leadership will take your word for it. When you say we will deliver this by this date, they will assume that, yeah, that's what you're going to do. So don't put it on the leadership. It's you. It's a flag for you because with such a variability in velocity, you cannot pick up the right milestones where we can potentially be delivering shippable products. And when you can't do that, you can't relate to the leadership. Make sense?
Mhm. The code of confidence was going to be negatively affected. So I started by investigating data, quality data, quantitative data. I facilitated retros and conducted one-on-one discussions with team members and found that the root cause turned out to be an increase in these cross-team dependencies, which were delaying the completion of stories entering a sprint. And those stories had incomplete requirements. So what I did to address the issue, I introduced a stricter definition of ready criteria and required dependency reviews before sprint planning. And we start to see.
So dependencies, new team members joining, old team members leaving are all visible causes of sprint velocity drop. They are not hidden, right? The question is asking that, at the face of it, everything looks just like what it was before, your team composition and everything, but velocity is degrading. Why? So the number one common culprit for that is your team is working on something new that you have not done before. All right. The second most common reason for it is you have a I-shaped skill team. You understand I-shaped skills?
I forget. I didn't remember, but you can remind me.
Okay. I-shaped skills are this developer is very good coding on Python. This developer can only do front end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, in this sprint, you have Python heavy stories and you just have one developer. So your other developers are kind of underutilized, but you can't put them on those stories because they are Python heavy, right?
I've had this happen too.
Yeah. So the team's skill composition is not conducive for the integrated feature-rich team. That is the other reason. But the biggest common one is that a new technology or solution is being worked on by the team for the first time, and there's a lot of discovery that's happening even before the work actually kicks in. Right? You are in this answer specifically. You were throwing everything in the answer that you possibly could to cover up for things that you were not able to articulate. I mean, I'm talking from investigation point of view. I instead of saying 3 or 4 specific sentences that, so I did a retro, I did 101, I did this. You want to take that one thing and just give it a little more depth. We did a retrospective, presented the problem, and the entire team swarmed on solving the problem. And instead of saying it 3 different things, 3 bullets is not good. One a detailed explanation is much better, right? Because you need to understand this thing. In an interview, the solution is not the most important part of the answer. The problem, the investigation, and the finding is the most important part of the answer, right? It's like Avengers, right? You would have seen Avengers, right? It took them whatever 7, 8, or 10 movies to create a problem so big that when Infinity Wars was launched, everybody already knew Thanos is going to be like somebody undefeatable kind of a thing. Everything, all the other movies were a build up to that. If we consider, multiple movies, then the last movie was basically what was the solution mode, right? But everything else was the build up, the problems. So that is how your answer needs to be. You can give the best possible solution, but if the problem is not big enough and the investigation is not coloring it well, then the solution will feel like, oh yeah, okay, so you just did this and it got worked out, right? But you got to make a big deal out of it.
I can see why I bummed those interviews now. All this is all apparent now. Hindsight now. I can see why I didn't get the call back.
No, I'm glad you can see the specifics that I'm trying to point, and I'm happy that because you are fresh off the interviews, you can kind of connect the dots and see what are some of the potential things that may not be working. That's great.